All right, so including the price reduction right there, this should be all of the major updates that they've made in the game. I think pretty much since forever, the past like 4 years, or at least as far as I've been playing. 15 of them on the list. If there's any that I missed, let me know. But I don't think so. And these are in like chronological order. So starting off with pilots. Okay, let's... We're gonna make S like, you know, it's really good and it's really good for the game. D is like it's super bad and it's super bad for the game. Pilots... It wasn't really good and it wasn't really bad. Like, obviously, it created... it created complications, but I think we all knew that pilots were coming. At least I did. We all knew that it's just an inevitable thing that's going to be in any mech game. Pilots are in every mech game, even though it doesn't really make sense, to be honest. Like, why do I have 5 mechs with 5 different pilots, but they can only go out one at a time into the battlefield? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But... you know, every mech game has it. Let's talk about, like, I don't know, the ways that they could have done it better. I think they really overdid it with the damage. Like, pilots and implants kind of go together. So when I talk about pilots, I'm also talking about implants. 100% damage boost with the pilots is ridiculous. And then there was the 40% HP. So it's just, you know, by design, they... purposely like overscaled the damage, probably with the intention of including mods later, because they knew that they were going to eventually do it. But, you know, they purposely overscaled the damage with pilots and then compensated it later with mods, like years later. I feel like they could have just balanced it out pretty well, like from one, you know? Like, they could have still added mods. I'm not saying that mods necessarily were unnecessary. So let's say there's, like, you know, it's a bit of both. So you could gear your implants toward damage, you could gear your mods toward damage and just go, like, all in on damage. Or you could do the opposite and do it on, like, HP. And I think it's better because, you know, customization. Obviously. A big part of the game, or at least a big part of what I feel like the game was marketed as for a while anyway, was customization, you know, having options. But you don't really have options, do you? You know, like, do you have the option to use a rare implant, an epic implant, or a legendary implant of the same thing? No, you don't. You just, like, if you have a legendary one, then you use it. There's literally no tactical benefit to using a rare one. So it's just like, and that goes for most implants, you know, like, there are just better ones and there are worse ones. And for the most part, it's the same thing with pilots too. You know, they're either better or they're worse, and there's really no in between. And what you're left with is very, like, you know, a very static, like, meta, essentially. Yeah, you guys are just gonna have to, you're just gonna have to suffer through it. There's gonna be no gameplay. I'm probably gonna edit this into a video later, in which case, yes, I know all of your attention spans are crap, so I'm gonna have gameplay in the top corner or something. And, like, one of the things that I've talked about before for pilots that I want to bring up again is, like, and that what I was just kind of talking about, is, like, the customization option. Like, I think that there should be way more implants. I do. I think that every weapon should have, like, 7 different implants to choose from. And I know some people are going to say, well, that's going to make it more difficult to get the implants that you want. And yeah, no, that's an obvious downside. So, like, if I could snap that into existence right now, would I? Nah, I mean, I'd probably think about it for a while first. And the reason I want more implants for mechs and for weapons, the reason I want more implants is because, like, it forces you to choose something. It forces you to choose something, as opposed to what we're stuck with now is there's a lot of weapons that do really well. In fact, some of the weapons that do really well are dependent on whether or not they have a lot of implants. So, weapons that only require, like, 1 implant, so like Revoker. Literally all you need is the Revoker damage implant. And that leaves you, you know, extra room for more ability implants. So, like, in terms of performance, less is better because it just gets you the peak performance without having to really do much, and it allows you more slots. But I would prefer the opposite. I prefer the opposite. But not to an extent that limits you, but to an extent that actually, like, gives you opportunities, you know? Like implants that increase your RPM, reload speed, range, like radius, there's a lot of things that you could add to a lot of weapons. Like some weapons just don't have radius implants, even though they have a damage radius. But you could, you know, like it'd be interesting to like actually build a specific thing in a specific way, but you just can't do that. So in general, what we're left with is a bunch of builds that you either build them correctly or you build them incorrectly. There's no, like, this is my preferred way of doing it. There's just a better way of doing it and a worse way of doing it. And that's simply it in, like, 99% of situations. Yes, there's some amount of preference that goes into a couple builds, but that's basically it. For the most part, it's just this build is better than this one. And it's, like, there's no nuance to it. And that sucks. I don't like that. I much prefer be able to use the same weapon with the same mech, but be able to build it in multiple different ways to be able to get, like, to be able to use it multiple different ways, like, you know, to kind of fit like a playstyle, right? If I can't reasonably take the same mech and the same weapon, put them together, if I can't reasonably make two rather different working builds out of that, just with the pilots and implants and maybe even mods. If I can't do that, then I don't think that's customization. I think that's just improvement, and there's a very big difference between improvement and customization. So that was the opportunity that they had with pilots, but they didn't take that opportunity. It's very sad. Surge buff up next. Ooh, this one was crazy. They did the surge buff was crazy. I hope you guys know. What were the numbers on that? It's like 40% speed boost, 50% more HP. They gave it like an extra second of EMP time. They gave it the stealth that didn't have stealth to begin with. They lowered the cooldown, I'm pretty sure. They increased the ability radius. They gave it everything. Everything. And it was just to Surge, too. They didn't do it to, like, Redox or Brick House or the... I think those were the only two legendary mechs at the time, maybe. I don't remember. No, there was a couple others. I think maybe Scorpius as well. They buffed Surge. No, I'm talking about this is forever ago. This is an update tier list. Oh my god. We're already getting people freaking out. Okay, look. The Surge buff was, like, years ago. So for anybody who doesn't know, Surge used to be super, super weak in HP. Weaker than... Not weaker than Redox. Redox got an extra buff from the Great Update, but it was super, super weak. And this was before the Great Update. So even compared to, like, Paragon, it was really weak. Compared to Lancer, it was very weak in terms of HP. It had Slingshot and Puma HP, I believe, 67,000 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, essentially they just gave it everything. That Surge buff was, like, they just gave it the works. And that was the start of something maybe not so great. The Surge meta literally never stopped. Since that point, Surge was top meta. And that's just it, right? That's just it. EMP is way too strong. Dashes are way too strong. The fact that Surge was hella weak. I mean, like, I used it back then. And it was actually, like, if you played it well, you could still use it really, really well. And I would actually do really good with it. And I was proud of that before they buffed it. But, like, yeah, no, I mean, like, after that, it's, like, the whole... There is no precedent to make another dash mech that was that strong. Because dash mechs are always going to be strong just because they're dash mechs. The dash distance needs to be nerfed. If they nerfed all of the dash distances, I think need to be nerfed. I think most of the reason dash mechs are so freaking strong is because they cover way too much ground in way too short of time. If they covered less ground, I think they would be more balanced. But that's just me. Like, obviously, I don't know that because we don't, like... they obviously can dash as far as they do, so I don't exactly know what would happen if they couldn't. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about the Surge buff. I think I just, like, I discovered it on the test server one day. Like, I was on the test server and I just discovered that it was, like, crazy freaking strong. And I was like, wait, what? Nobody used Surge before then. It was so difficult to use. I was, like, the only one who used it. Next one, Great Update. I think we can all agree this belongs in D. In fact, I'm going to relabel this to F just for, you know, just for the sake of argument. The grade update was kind of crap. I sort of understand why they did it. Like, yeah, sure, it kind of made sense. Like a maxed out legendary thing probably should perform better than a maxed out common thing. But it didn't at the time, and they had no reason to change it, right? Like if it did from the start, then I would not have questioned it one time, not even a single small amount. I would not have questioned it at all. But the fact that it like a maxed surge or a maxed legendary mech was equal to a maxed common mech, the fact that that was the precedent for a long time, for a couple years, I think, at least. That was the precedent for a long time. And then all of a sudden is just like, that's just not the case anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, but like, why? And that was dumb. And another thing that actually happened that a lot of people forget about, and maybe a lot of people didn't even know about, is that during the grade update, they buffed weapon damage by 50% more than they buffed mech HP. So, like, let's say common items, Paragon, its HP got buffed by 0%. But autocannon got a 50% damage buff. I believe legendary mechs got a 50% HP buff, or was it 100%? I don't remember. Someone couldn't tell me. But what I'm trying to say is the weapons got 50% more buff than the mechs did. And what that did was it further reinstated the excessive damage meta. But yeah, a lot of people don't know about that, or if they did, they forgot about it. And really what that did is it actually made the mod update worse. We'll talk about that when we get there. But like, they would not have had to make mods so freaking strong if they did not make the damage meta worse than it already was with the grade update, but they did. And that's one of the things that pissed me off the most about it. And I felt like nobody really gave it the attention that it deserved. This game has always been higher in damage since pilots, mainly to make matches quicker. They don't want to slow down the pace, but they weren't slowing down the pace, right? The pace was always fast. Matches would more often than not end with one team meching out the other before the timer even came close to ending. And I'm talking about control point mode. I'm talking about CPC, which is an objective-based mode where kills are not the highest priority. Most of the time, you'd win by kills anyway. Most of the time. And then they made pilots, which made that even worse. And then they did the grade update, which made that even worse. And there was no precedent for either of those. And I rather refuse to believe that there ever was a precedent. Because here we are with mods, and it's still basically the same thing. Most matches end before the timer runs out or before the influence accumulates. Most matches end with kills. Or at least half. And, you know, for an objective-based game mode, I think the primary way of winning should be with the objective. Because that's what you're playing the game mode for. And so, if you're winning based on just raw kills, raw damage alone, like, even 30% of the time, I think that's even possibly too much. I think that should be a possibility. Yeah, it's great to have a possibility of killing everybody. But the fact that that's like basically like the main way of winning. And a lot of times you might say, well, you know, like when I win, the influence is basically at 100, or sometimes I win by 100. A lot of times that you actually win by 100 is because you're meching out the enemy. They're losing mechs, and as a result, you grab more beacons because there's less enemies on the field. So even in quite a lot of the instances where you win by influence, you technically only won because the enemies were running out of mechs, and not because you actually had beacon, like just not because you know tactically gained beacon advantage, just because you killed everybody and that's it. Do you really like the high damage, fast paced gameplay? Sure, that's fine. But keep in mind the problem that I have with all of this. The problem that I have with all of this is the pilots stacked so much damage. They increase your damage by 100% versus the 40% that they boost your HP, right? So already you see, well, you know, after the pilots update, hold on, this is disproportionately adding to the damage more than the HP. And then when you have the grade update, it goes even further. The HP of all the legendary mechs and stuff, that gets buffed, but the damage of legendary weapons gets buffed by even more. And so that creates a problem that requires a solution, and that is the reason we have mods. a lot of people, I mean, mods make sense as a feature, just like pilots make sense as a feature. So I'm not complaining about mods as a feature, but a lot of people don't like the way that mods are made. They don't like how strong they are. They don't agree with a lot of the details behind it. And I agree. They wouldn't have to be the way that they are if it wasn't so egregious in terms of the damage meta. So they stacked damage buff after damage buff, and then they created a solution to it. In order to tone it down to basically where it was, they had to make mods super, super strong. They could have made pilots equally buff damage and HP. They could have made implants be a relatively neutral factor in terms of damage and survivability. And the same thing goes with the grade update. They could have buffed everything by the same percentage, but they didn't. So yeah, grade update, no likey, not a big fan. Free for all, it didn't really make a difference. Like, some people enjoyed it, some people hated it. I felt like most of the people who had the free for all meta were the ones that enjoyed it, and that was basically it. Everybody else was getting clowned on. And yeah, no, I mean, to me, it was just like it didn't really need to exist, but I guess it's okay that it does. Like, it's better that it exists than for it to not exist, but I would like really, really like for it to be a custom game mode, because that would be nice. The fact that, like, you know, you have to play it in order to do certain tournament weeks is kind of annoying, but, you know, 5v5 was also annoying. I think between the two, I probably like free-for-all more than 5v5, to be honest. I didn't really love it, but I didn't really hate it, to be honest. Alright, next one was the Gear Hub. I think a lot of people were saying that they didn't like it. I'm going to put it in A. I think it's better that the Gear Hub exists than for the progress path to exist, because they weren't adding anything to the progress path, right? So at very least, the Gear Hub ensured that, you know, even people who were willing to spend money, I don't know if you guys know this, but like, even people who had money and they were willing to spend it, they had to wait until a random offer popped up to be able to get the thing that they wanted. At least now they can just get it directly from the Gear Hub. But the Gear Hub also, you know, there's the downside of the fact that it requires you to buy a certain number of things from each tier in order to progress to the next one. I don't necessarily think that's a bad system, but I do think, like, it's purposely, intentionally, like, stalling your progress to make sure that you don't, like, get too far too fast, which I think kind of makes sense. Like, from a game design perspective, you don't want to just, like, throw someone into the deep end where it's just like, okay, you know, now here you've been playing for 2 weeks, now you have a maxed out account. Like, how long you realistically, how long are you going to play? Most people play this game for the grind, and if they didn't have any type of goal in mind, they would just get bored of it and leave. I'm making a general statement based on pretty much zero evidence, so, like, don't quote me on that, and maybe you disagree, but, like, I get the impression that most people, just based on the way that people talk and based on the way that they act, I would say that most players would get bored very, very quickly if there was nothing to actually work toward. If they had a maxed account with everything they ever wanted, they'd have a lot of fun with it for like a month, and then they'd be like, well, now what? You know, it's like, there's kind of no reason to keep playing. You want to see freaking Lancers rank 6 on your matches with rocket mortars? Why not? It's kind of funny. But another thing that actually, what actually happened with the Gear Hub as well, that a lot of people don't know about, some people do, and I feel it's talked about more than the grade update, but the prices were actually a little bit cheaper before the Gear Hub. So a legendary mech costs what? 9,375 acorns for a legendary mech. It used to be 7,500. It used to be 7,500 for a legendary mech. That's like between 20 and 25%. So it's a lot more expensive. It's exactly 25%. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I don't know why they did that. It's not like they gave a lot of acorns for any reason outside of, like, maybe all of the playoffs, but the playoffs don't really count. The playoffs are just like, oh, here's 10,000 acorns to whoever spends the most money within 2 weeks. That's all the playoffs are. I agree with your theory of having goals for players without a carrot stick. Current, like, players are... in most games get too bored. Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm not gonna sit here saying like, oh yeah, it's great that they make it take 17 years for people to get one mech in this game. I'm not gonna say that. But it's good to not allow people to just get whatever they want within like a week. I think a lot of people think about it in terms of, I've been trying to get this thing for so long and it would be great to just have it. But if they just had it from the very beginning, they would be bored of it. And if you gave it to them right now, like if you gave somebody an account, like, I know you're not supposed to do that, but like, let's just say theoretically, somebody just like had an account, was given an account that had literally every item, all of it maxed, they would get so bored so quick. Even myself on my main account, like, I don't want to max out most of my weapons, mostly because it's not super cost effective, but also because, like, I kind of want something to do later, you know? Like, I've focused rather minimally on my late game super meta sweaty hanger. And part of the reason is because I want to be able to improve it, because it's nice to be able to upgrade stuff, to be able to improve it in one way or another. So, like, yes, I have the mod parts necessary to just buy a bunch of mods and absolutely deck out my meta hanger, but I don't want to. I'd rather have something that I'm actually, like, some type of long-term goal, because otherwise I'd just get bored. Not that I use my meta hanger a lot, but just as an example. I used to use it a lot, but just as an example. And, yeah, so I max out my mods on basically nothing, just because it's nice to be able to think, like, oh, you know, at some point in the future I'll be able to max this out. And for some things I do, but for the most part, I don't. And same thing with implants. I have most of my implants. I've been getting a lot of legendary implants, but most of them are rank level 5. And I'm not worried too much about maxing out the ones that I use a lot. Yeah, there's quite a few that I use a lot, and I could max them out, but it's just nice to be able to have something that you can do later. They need to find the right way to balance, because right now a new mech takes way too long. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of the reason why I liked the price change so much. It's because it tells me, yeah, they're actually looking at the prices now. The redesign was another big one. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. I think the majority of people liked it because at the end of the day, if you really liked the old design, they still give you, like, all of the old skins still look the same. They even give you the option to use the old classic paint job. So I don't think it was really a downside to anybody. I think it was just a little bit cooler to a lot of people. I'll put that in A just because I personally liked it a lot. But I don't think it didn't really make an impact. Like, at the end of the day, like, they could have just not done it and nobody would have cared. Aegis buff is the next one. And by Aegis buff, I mean the Aegis rework. What happened was Aegis's dome used to be indestructible, same as Panther. Except you couldn't shoot, like, you or your allies could not shoot through it. So enemies couldn't shoot inside, you couldn't shoot outside or inside or anything. It was an absolute wall against all damage from all sources. And I'm not gonna lie, back then Aegis was my favorite mech because I think it took a lot of skill to operate back then. And then they kind of removed a lot of the skill from it, and while simultaneously making it like one of the most meta broken mechs. But at the same time, it kind of was one of the more interesting metas. Like, it can't just be me. It can't just be me who thinks the Aegis meta was actually, like, not that bad. Like, of all the different metas that the game has had, the Aegis one was not that bad. I'm gonna put it in B because I don't think it was particularly good, but I don't think it was particularly bad. I didn't mind the Aegis meta, but I guess that's maybe just because I'm more of a tank guy and I already kind of liked Aegis from the start. So maybe it is just me, but I think some people liked it, some people disliked it. It didn't really upset a whole lot. Okay, so then the weapon rebalance. This included the disc launcher nerf, which they nerfed by a lot. And then the arc torrent nerf, which they also nerfed by a rather sizable margin. I think disc launcher was too meta, but mods are what killed disc launcher. It was not the nerf. So they literally, and because mods released like not even a month after they nerfed it, they literally could have just not nerfed Disk Launcher and let the mods deal with it naturally. That's what they should have done. It would have made people significantly less angry at Plarium because it was unnecessary. It seemed unnecessary because it was unnecessary. They should have just left it meta for a while longer. That's my take. The Arc Torrent nerf, completely unnecessary. Arc Torrent wasn't even strong. Like, it was not a meta weapon back then when they nerfed it. A lot of people did think they thought it was strong. It was good, but it wasn't like meta. And I mean, it was an epic weapon, so yeah, you know, it being good but not meta is probably the best place for an epic weapon to be. But then they nerfed it and made it kind of garbage. I don't know why they did that. But then simultaneously, they also buffed Nade Launcher, Cryo Launcher, the damage by a small amount. I think 12%-ish? Maybe 18, I don't remember. They buffed Minigun damage by a little bit. That didn't really change anything. I think Minigun would have been meta after mods anyway. And then they buffed Chain Gun by a lot, but it's still crap. So it's mostly like, you know, the small nerfs to these weapons that weren't very good versus these small buffs to these weapons that still aren't very good. So it's like I'm gonna leave it in B because it's like there's some pros to it, there's some cons to it, but like a lot of it was kind of unnecessary. Both of the nerfs I think were totally unnecessary. They could have just not done that and people would have been happier. Like I was all for the Disk Launcher nerf, but then for them to release mods right afterwards was dumb. Like, at very least, they should have seen, like, okay, how do these weapons perform after mods before we nerf them or before we buff them? Because things change a lot after updates like that. Like, you should at least see what it looks like first. Clearly, they already, you know, had that stuff planned. So, yeah, it's just weird. Onslaught, the PvE. I'm gonna say C. Technically, it's a net positive because it's like there's no downside to it existing, but it was such a bad release that I can't even put it in a positive. Like, I can't even put it in a neutral rating, much less positive. The way that they implemented it is it's so bad. I never thought PvE was a mode that should have existed anyway, because it takes players actively out of PvP matches, and there's few enough of those as it is. But the rewards are crap. It forces you to buy all kinds of stuff. Fun fact, the latest one was the worst one out of all of them, even though it had the best skin, which is sad. The Gatecrasher skin. It's very cool, but it required that you buy all kinds of 8-coin-based items, and it gave you, like, nothing in return. It was, like, really... And I don't just mean 8-coin-based items. I mean 8-coin-based items that nobody should ever buy, because they're just bad items. And yeah, it was bad. I didn't like it. So the latest one that they did was not very good. Yeah, I don't know what they plan on doing with that in the future, but I really hope that they make better ones. The idea of it was okay. I think most people would have preferred a boss mode because that's what everybody was like hyping themselves up over. But ultimately, no, it's honestly I think it's kind of a crap feature. Promo codes. I mean, they don't make a lot of promo codes. I feel like it would have been an S if there was, like, reliability to it. But there's not. I've suggested that they do, like, you know, some type of, like, monthly recurring promo code of some kind. Just because people like to have something to kind of rely on. Even if it doesn't give the same thing every time. It's just something to get excited about, right? Something that you know is coming is something to get excited about. If you have no idea when it's coming, then you're not going to be excited about it. Maybe you are, like, maybe you get excited about it when you hear about it, but you don't know it's coming before then. And it's super unreliable. They just kind of make codes when they make them, and whatever happens, happens. Most of the time, the codes are just for new players, and that's also kind of, like, not great. And also, bro, the addiction that has occurred in the global chat ever since promo codes, I'll tell you. It's like an addict looking for their next fix. I'm not even lying. Just want to spread awareness for the Mech Arena YouTuber promo code that gives EM Rifle 6 and Stalker. It's not a promo code. That's a download link. I don't like those links. I've known about them for a long time. and I know where I can get them, and I could put them in my videos or whatever. I could have even used it on my free-to-play account, but I don't like them. Because nobody coming over to my videos, watching my videos, doesn't already play the game. So it's stupid to be like, oh yeah, you know, my top recommendation for progressing as fast as possible is to just completely undo everything you just did and start from scratch using this link. I think it's stupid. They're good links. I just don't like them. Mods. A lot of people would put it in F. I'm going to put it in C. I think most people would put it in C. Because it was a fine idea. It was a good idea with bad execution, as almost all of their updates are. It's basically like, if you could summarize Mech Arena updates in one phrase, it would be good idea, bad execution. That's what I would say. Because mods as a feature made sense. I knew that they were coming for years. I had been telling people for literally years, ever since pilots came out, I was like, mods are a natural next step. I played War Robots. I knew it was coming. Every mech game has modules of some type. But the way that they made them was, let's say, atrocious. for lack of better words, let's say atrocious. Essentially, mod parts are just a pay-to-win thing. Like, mods are basically a pay-to-win feature because you can't get mod parts as a free-to-play player. It basically can't. It doesn't happen. The only way that you can get them is from the weekly tasks, and they give you crap. Like, they don't give you anything. And that's the only way that you can get it is from the weekly task. Going back to, like, what I said about pilots, they should have done the same thing with mods. I liked the fact that in the A slot, the slot A for mods, you had two major options, I should say. Actually, no, 4 options. Oh no, I'm talking about 4. You had 4 options. You had the solid perimeter, the solid blockade, the perimeter multilayer, and the blockade multilayer. You know, the perimeter multilayer just happened to be the strongest one. I don't think that they necessarily planned that, because it also happened to be the cheapest one, and if they planned it, they definitely would not have done that. They wouldn't have made it the cheapest one. But if they balanced it better, having multiple options is nice. It's cool. It's a nice idea. The concept of it, like even ignoring the fatal flaws to certain extents, the concept of it was fine, and they should have done that to all the other slots as well, but they didn't. You have one option for slot B, you have one option for slot C, you have one option for slot D. And it's just like, oh, what do you put there? The good one or the bad one? That's the extent of your options. And that's very much reflects the kind of situation that you have with pilots, where it's like, which implants do I equip, the good ones or the bad ones? Like, there's no I prefer these implants. It's just I have these implants that happen to be worse, so I'm just going to use them. Like, there's good builds and there's bad builds. There's really no nuance to it, and that's irritating. And the same thing happens with mods, where it's like there's good ones and there's bad ones, there's better ones and there's worse ones, expensive ones and cheap ones. But there's no like I prefer to use my whatever mech with this mod. Like, no, it's like you're either doing it right or you're doing it wrong, and it very much goes against what I think the game should be, which is customizable. I mean, they market themselves as customizable, but they're not really. And that's why I say, like, this game doesn't have variety. You know, in terms of top meta, like, if you want a top meta hanger, there's, like, I'll be generous and I'll say that there's, like, maybe 10 to 12 different variations, but 4 of the builds stay almost literally the exact same. 4 of the builds are completely static, and then there's just one that you can use depending on what you feel like using. But for the most part, you don't actually have options. You're either using a better hanger or you're using a worse hanger, and people's playstyle and preferences don't matter, because the stuff that works well just works so much better that it doesn't matter how good of a player you are. You're going to do better with it always. Pilot rework, S tier. Honestly, the only thing that wasn't so great about the pilot rework was the fact that they changed the pilots to, for whatever reason, instead of having 40% general damage and then 30% innate, it's now just like full 70%. I'm talking about max legendary pilots, of course. It's now just like a full 70% innate damage. So now if you use a missile weapon on an assault pilot, you get no damage bonus from it. I found that a bit unnecessary and uncalled for, but in all other aspects, it was great. Because along with the pilot rework, there was the implant rework, obviously, where you could take the implants off of your pilots for free, as opposed to having to spend I think 4,000 A-coins is what it would require you to spend to take a max legendary implant off of a pilot. 4,000 A-coins. You can get a bunch of implants now from like the implant shop. They added that, and you can get a bunch of what used to be super, super hard to get implants, like Orion Shield Piercing, Guardian System Crash Range. Those are nice implants to have, specifically the Orion one. The Guardian one's a little less relevant now, but yeah. And then there's even some for credits. Like if you want to get a bunch of implant parts, the best way to do it is actually just to buy legendary implants with credits in the shop, and then just scrap them. It's like the most cost-effective way of doing it. Yeah, that was kind of long overdue, I'm not gonna lie. Mods update deserves F tier. I was waiting for somebody to say that. The mods rework, that is F tier. Absolutely. There's literally no reason for it to happen. Essentially, at one point, they decided, okay, mods are now a thing that new players who hadn't unlocked mods at the time, new players can only equip mods on rank 6 mechs, which is like why? Why? Anybody who already had mods at the time it shouldn't have affected you at all. A lot of people probably didn't even notice, but I think I made a video about it. I made a post about it probably. But it's like the most like brain dead, like why in the world was this even necessary update that I've ever seen? Like I don't even understand like a theoretical benefit. Like I can't even think about it in terms of what does Plarium, like how is this gonna make Plarium more money? I can't even think about it that way. Cause it's like, how would it make Plarium more money? Now new players can't buy mods. Mods are stupid expensive. They would have made more sales by allowing new players to buy mods. And that's just a fact. It was they were not cooking with that one, I'll tell you. It's the most anti-new player update ever. Yeah. I mean, like, give it, like, 6 months or a year or whatever. I don't know how long it's been, but it really did mess with people who, like, newly joined the game right after they changed it, because then everyone had mods except for them, and that's what made it super, super unfair. Not that it was, like, fair in general. Like, it didn't make any sense, the entire thing. Someone at Plarium tripped over a wire for F. Alright, loyalty program, the thing where, I mean, we've only really seen it one time. The loyalty program, a lot of people have asked about it ever since that update. It's the thing where, instead of the gold crate at the end of the daily login thing, every 30 days, or 28 days, whatever, it's, something different. The latest one was a Tengu, and I think that one ended up getting replaced with an amateur crate, which is disappointing. But they said in the update notes, this is a screenshot of the update notes, that's what this picture is. They said in the update notes that it was going to be mechs, weapons, and pilots. And I think, did they say and more? I don't remember. Mechs, weapons, pilots, and more? I think that's maybe what they said. So essentially, they just made the daily login thing like a bit better. I'm gonna put it A because it's like, yeah, net positive. Like I'm glad they did it. It's better that they did it rather than not. But at the same time, it didn't really make a big difference. We're kind of early on into things, so like that. My opinion on it might change, but as of now, it seems relatively inconsequential. They need new epic and rare mechs and weapons. I agree. Since they made it, I used to kind of push back on that. But since they made it so dang cheap, I think that's actually, I think it's a valid take. I think it's a valid take. You do think Tengu should be buffed to 24 energy. Explain to me why without just telling me because you like it. I've made some polls before. In fact, I can bring those up right now. So I made some polls kind of a while back asking which mechs people thought should get buffed. And the general consensus... If you could buff one of these epic mechs, which one would it be? The overwhelming consensus was Redeemer, even though Redeemer's the strongest one. There was another one, if you could buff one of these rare mechs to make it legendary, which one would it be? Or even just like, if you could buff it. The overwhelming consensus was Tengu. So the general trend that I see is that most people want to buff the things that are already the strongest. And it's not because it needs a buff, it's because they like it. And they like it because it's strong. And because they like it, they want it to be stronger. So when people keep telling me they need to buff Tengu for, like, they need to buff Tengu, they need to do this, they need to do that, they need to buff Tengu, or buff Redeemer, or whatever. It's like, Tengu is already the strongest rare mech. Actually, I think Tengu is stronger than Guardian. If you're going to max out one rare mech, I would personally go with Tengu. I don't know why people keep calling for a buff for stuff that's already strong. That's basically what I'm saying. Anyway, the last one, price reduction update. Yes, I just think it's great. There's some negative aspects to it. You can think of a downside to everything. There's nothing that's ever going to be strictly, perfectly, 100% positive. You can always think of a reason to dislike something. So, like, if we're getting into the nitty-gritty, sure, like, whatever. If you really want to go there. But I think, ultimately, it's good to let people be able to buy and upgrade stuff without it costing an arm and a leg, right? I don't think that buying the wrong rare mech should be something that, like, actually costs you so much of your time. A lot of people, they rank up their Guardian one time, and the only thing I can think of when I see a rank 4 Guardian is like, oh my goodness. The amount of credits and acoins that they wasted on this one rank up is absurd, and it probably set them back like 2 months. And it shouldn't be like that. They're new players. Like, they don't know any better. Let them get what they want. Let them upgrade what they want. And I don't think it's anybody's business to, like, try to force Plarium to then force players to upgrade and buy stuff in a more meta fashion. I can't think of any reason to dislike price reduction. Go to probably Reddit. You'll find people who have reasons. You were shocked, though, for once they're not lying when they said major price reduction? Oh, yeah. Oh, they were lying. It's ridiculous. I want my money back. If you go to the Gear Hub and then go to the Pilots tab, Major still costs 3,000 acoins. I thought it was gonna be a price reduction for Major, bro. Oh my god. I demand compensation. Going back to the price reduction thing, I think it's cool. I'm glad that, you know, at least the worst stuff is cheaper. I do genuinely think that they're gonna make the epic and legendary stuff cheaper, though, because players are just gonna progress to like tier 5 really, really quickly, and then they're just gonna hit a wall, a progression wall, and they can't get past it. Like, it would just take forever. Like, yeah, they could get past it, but it would just take like a lot longer than they're used to. And I'm talking about like new players who haven't played the game before. And so they'd be like, what the heck is this? And they'd probably stop playing. So I think that because of that, I think the devs know that. I think the devs know that, absolutely. And I think that because of that, I think that they would reduce the prices of Epic and Legendary. Potentially, they'd even do it rather soon. Because, like, yeah, they could wait, like, 6 months or a year or something before they do it. But, like, they get tons of players who are joining the game within a couple weeks getting to tier 5 because it's that easy. And then just getting bored of the grind. The sudden change in pace, they'd get bored of it, and then they'd leave. They'd lose so many players. The longer they wait to make that stuff cheaper, the more players that they lose. So, I think that it's fairly possible, I think it's very possible, that they reduce the prices of Epic and Legendary stuff by quite a bit, and relatively soon as well, so like maybe like a month or two. My guess is, somebody else was saying like 20 to 25% reduction for Legendary. That sounds about right, to be honest. And then like 40-ish% for Epic. I thought the Aegis buff was a bigger deal than you placed it. It became a CPC staple. Well, it was meta, yeah. I mean, that's what meta is. It definitely did upset the game, but like, did it upset the game in a positive way or a negative way, you know? Like, it upset the meta. But, like, was it a good meta or was it a bad meta? Like, that's the real problem. I'm not talking about, like, effectiveness. If we were going based on, like, how much it affected the game, then sure, I put it in, like, A or S or the other way around, depending on, like, which direction's which. But I'm not talking about just, like, how much it affected the game. I'm talking about, like, whether it affected the game positively or negatively. And I don't think it really did it one way or the other, so I put it in B. But that's just my personal opinion on it. In reality, most of the major updates, Pilots, Great Update, PvE, feel like totally missed potential in many ways. Said how the best updates are those that undo previous bad decisions. It's kinda true, yeah. Just give everyone more A-coins rather than downgrading everything else, what do you mean? So instead of making stuff cheaper, you should just get more acorns. How is there any difference to that? Well, by reducing stuff like common by more than you reduce stuff than like rare, it kind of makes even more sense, because then you can spend even less on something like a common mech and still get max performance. Giving more acorns feels more rewarding. Oh, I agree. I've been saying for a long time, like they should definitely be giving people more acorns, but you know, reducing the cost has the same effect, right? I mean, yes, I think what you're trying to say is people would just be more mentally satisfied if they had a larger number in their account, even if it was effectively the same. People are just more, they're more likely to be happy, and they're more likely to, you know, at least feel accomplished if the number that they have is larger, even if proportionally it's the exact same amount. And I kind of agree with you. And then there's elite mod parts. We don't talk about mod parts. Mod parts are like freaking unicorns, bro. You can't find them. I don't like to talk about mod parts because for the longest time, I was telling people when mods came out, I was telling people, like, you know, don't, like, yeah, you can't really get mod parts right now. It's really annoying, but, like, you know, don't worry about it. They're working on other ways of getting mod parts, which is what they told me. And I'm really pissed that nothing has happened with that. Remember when mods were added, Plarium said elite mod parts would be in events? Yeah. And that's what I was saying. That's what I'd said for a long time. I was like, don't worry, guys. They're going to add it to other stuff. And that's what they told me. And then months went by, a year went by, still literally nothing. Literally nothing. And that kind of pissed me off. What did we do to deserve mod prices being the same as red? That's crazy. But there's a lot of places that they could have added it, but they didn't add it anywhere. Like, literally to nowhere. How long ago were mods added? It was December of, not last year, but it's the year before, so it's been like a year and a half. Yeah, and still nothing has happened, except for Quarterly Clash, but that doesn't really count in my mind. Anyway, this has been fun. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for stopping by.